On my 5th month at what I thought was my dream job, my manager smiled while firing me for not hitting a target she knew was mathematically impossible. And I smiled back. Because the second she said, "We'll just hire a professional production house," I knew she had just signed her own career's death certificate. Hi Reddit. This happened in the early 2010s, when YouTube wasn't what it is now. No AI editing. No Canva templates. No $10 stock music subscriptions. If you wanted to make professional video content, you needed real gear, real people, and real time. I was 25, fresh out of film school, cocky, hungry, slightly arrogant if I'm being honest. I wasn't Spielberg, but I knew I was good. And more importantly, I knew how much work good content actually took. The university that hired me wanted to modernize its brand. Translation: the board discovered YouTube existed. They brought me in as a one-man content department. Salary? Roughly $2,200 a month. Not great, not terrible, but for someone my age trying to build a reel, it was fine. Until day 2. That's when my manager handed me a printed sheet of paper. 85 videos in 52 weeks, she said, smiling like she just assigned me a fun group project. I blinked. 85. Total? Yes, she nodded. 3 to 10 minutes each. Let me break that down. That's roughly 1.6 videos per week. But not just editing. I had to write scripts, cast students, book professors, shoot, light, record audio, edit, color grade, export, upload, create thumbnails, manage comments, and because they were budget conscious, I also had to compose original background music, using my own laptop, because their media department computer struggled to export 720p. I remember doing the math in my head. Even if I did nothing but production, no meetings, no revisions, no approvals, it was barely possible. And that's assuming everything went perfectly, which nothing ever does. I tried to push back gently. Is there budget for a part-time assistant? No. Music licensing? No. Equipment upgrade? We'll revisit that next fiscal year. She smiled the whole time. If the quality is strong, she said sweetly, we won't focus too much on the numbers. That sentence would become very important later. The first month was brutal. I was working 60-hour weeks, sometimes more. I'd shoot during the day, edit at night, sleep 5 hours, repeat. But the content, it was good. Actually, it was very good. By month 3, my videos had outperformed every previous upload the university had ever made. Engagement up 400%. Comments from prospective students. Actual growth. I was exhausted but proud. That's when she found out I smoked. And something shifted. It was small at first. A comment about professional image. Then, did you wash your hands? You smell like smoke. Try to be more presentable. One day she said, addiction reflects poor self-discipline. I almost laughed. I was working 70-hour weeks. But sure, the cigarette was the discipline issue. Then came the nitpicking. You're 7 minutes late. You didn't reply to my email within 20 minutes during lunch. The font on this lower third feels aggressive. Aggressive. It was Arial. My colleague pulled me aside one day. You know she hates smokers, right? Like, strongly. Like, tries to get them fired. Cool. Love that for me. By month 5, I had completed 30 full videos. That may not sound impressive, but do the math. 30 fully produced, scripted, shot, edited videos. Alone. In 5 months. That's 6 per month. Which is insane output for one person at that time. But not 42. Which is what I should have been at the halfway mark. Then I got the calendar invite. Meeting with director. Manager attending. That's when you know. I walked in. Director looked uncomfortable. Manager looked excited. You know that fake concern face? The "this is difficult for me" expression? Yeah. That one. The director folded his hands. We're concerned about performance. I kept calm. In what way? You're behind on your KPI. I explained the workload, the production time, the engagement success, the overtime. I reminded them of her statement. Quality over quantity. My manager actually snorted. Audibly. The KPI was always 85, she said. We need professionals who can meet deliverables. Professionals. That word again. The director nodded slowly. We think it's best to part ways now rather than later. And that's when she said it. We'll just hire a professional production house to finish the remaining 55 videos. There it was. The arrogance. The assumption that external equals better. The belief that I was replaceable. And here's the thing. I wasn't angry yet. I was calculating. Because I was the one who built the vendor database. I was the one who knew what production houses charged. Back then, a mid-tier production company charged anywhere between $5,000 to $8,000 per finished video. Do the math. 55 videos even $6,000 average? That's $330,000. My yearly salary was $26,400. They were about to spend over 12 times my annual salary to replace me. And here's the part she didn't understand. I knew every production house in the city, and most of them knew me, because I freelanced before this job. Which meant I knew exactly who to call. I left that meeting calm, collected my box, walked to my car, sat down, and started smiling, because this wasn't revenge yet. This was opportunity. And if they wanted professionals, I was about to give them professionals. Just not the kind they expected. I didn't drive home after they fired me. I drove to a coffee shop 2 blocks away, ordered something overpriced, sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up the vendor database. See, part of my job had been building a list of production houses in case we ever needed to outsource larger-scale shoots. Most universities keep outdated spreadsheets. Mine didn't, because I built it. Every contact, every rate estimate, every crew size, every equipment package. And more importantly, I knew which companies were hungry and which ones were greedy. There's a difference. I didn't want greedy. I wanted ambitious. I pulled out my phone and called Daniel. Daniel and I went to film school together. He was 2 years older, always slightly more polished, less chaotic than me, but extremely talented. He worked at a mid-sized production house as a junior director. Not a big-shot director. Not yet. But he wanted to be. And this was a golden ticket. He picked up on the second ring. Yo, you busy? Always. What's up? I just got fired. Pause. Damn. What happened? They said I couldn't hit 85 videos in a year. He started laughing. Wait. Alone? Alone. He whistled. Yeah, that's psychotic. It gets better, I said. They're hiring a professional production house to finish the remaining 55. Silence. Then, how big is the budget? I leaned back. They don't know yet. That's when his tone changed. Explain. I laid it out. University wants 55 videos completed in roughly 6 months. Each video 10 minutes. Branded. Professional. Fast turnaround. He started doing math in real time. If we charged 6 per video. Low. 7. Better. 55 times 7. That's $385,000. Now he was quiet. That number hits different when you say it out loud. And that's conservative, I said. You could justify 8. For $140,000. He whispered. I could hear him pacing. That's half a year of steady production, he said. Full crew rotation. Editors on rotation. It would put me in lead position. Exactly. Now we were talking. But why would they pick us? He asked. I smiled. Because I'm going to teach you exactly what they want to hear. We met that night. Not at his office. Neutral ground. Bar. Dim lighting. Cheap beer. I laid out the situation like a war strategy. You don't pitch creativity, I told him. You pitch efficiency. You emphasize workflow. You talk about content pipelines. You mirror their buzzwords. I wrote phrases on a napkin. Brand consistency. Scalable production framework. Content ecosystem. Audience growth trajectory. Institutional storytelling. Daniel stared at the napkin like I just handed him cheat codes. You know them that well? I built their entire content direction. And your manager? She wants to prove she can replace me easily. He grinned. So we make it easy. Exactly. Then came the part where I pushed. 15%. I said. For what? Finder's fee. He blinked. That's high. It's half a year of revenue. He didn't argue after that. We called his general manager. Speakerphone. I laid it out calmly. They need 55 videos in 6 months. They're panicking. They want professionals. If you move fast, you'll lock it in before they price check. The GM didn't hesitate long. What's your fee? 15. Pause. That's steep. So is $400,000. Long silence. Done. Just like that. We had a deal. 2 days later, Daniel texted me. They reached out. Of course they did. My manager had no production contacts. No industry network. No clue what things actually cost. She went straight to the vendor list. The one I built. The only one she trusted. And Daniel's company was right there. Pitch day. I wasn't in the room, but Daniel recorded everything for me afterward. He walked in with mood boards, production timelines, Gantt charts, crew breakdowns, equipment lists, post-production pipelines. He didn't oversell. He didn't promise miracles. He promised structure. He told them, with a rotating 2-crew model, we can complete a video every 2-3 days once momentum builds. That sounded fast. It also sounded expensive. My manager was apparently glowing. Finally, professionals. They asked about cost. Daniel stayed calm. Given the volume and timeline, we'd estimate approximately $7,200 per video. There it was. $7,200. 55. $396,000. For context, my annual salary? $26,400. They were about to spend nearly 15 times my yearly pay. The director hesitated, but my manager leaned forward. If this guarantees completion? Daniel nodded. It guarantees delivery, which it would, at a price. They signed within 48 hours. No competitive bids. No second pitch. No real due diligence. Just ego and speed. When Daniel called to confirm it was official, I was at home eating ramen. He didn't even say hello. It's signed. How much? $402,000 after revisions. I actually laughed out loud. And my cut? $60,300. Let that sink in. I had just been fired from a $2,200 month job. And within 1 week, I secured 15 months of my salary. Upfront. Legally contracted. For knowing my boss's personality. I transferred that money straight into savings. Then I booked a 1-week trip to Bali. Because why not? If you're going to watch someone burn their own budget down, you might as well do it from a beach. The production started fast. Too fast. Full crew vans. Lighting trucks. Sound operators. 2 editors rotating shifts. Craft services. My former manager posted on LinkedIn, excited to announce our new partnership with a professional production firm to accelerate our content strategy. Accelerate. Yes, that's one word for it. What she didn't post. Daily burn rate. Each shoot day was roughly $12,000 once you factored crew, equipment, post-production, and overhead. They were producing 2 to 3 videos a week, which meant roughly $50,000 per week leaving the university's budget. I knew this because Daniel sent me numbers. Not exact invoices. Just enough. And every time I saw the updates, I couldn't help smiling. Not because I hated them, but because they underestimated me. And ego is expensive. Very expensive. By month 3, they had completed 30 outsourced videos. Which sounds impressive. Until you realize that meant they'd already spent over $200,000. The university's entire original content budget was barely over $40,000. They were exceeding it by multiples, and no one upstairs had realized yet, because the director trusted my manager, and my manager trusted the invoice summaries. And no one trusted math. That would change soon. Because finance departments always wake up eventually. And when they do, they ask very uncomfortable questions. I was in Bali when finance woke up. Specifically, I was on a beach chair, holding a drink I absolutely could not afford 6 months earlier, when Daniel texted me, "Finance just froze payments." That's when you know the adults have entered the room. See, production companies invoice in waves. First deposit, then milestone payments, then final delivery payments. For the first month, everything felt controlled. Invoices were approved because they were within projections. Month 2, still manageable. Month 3, the numbers started stacking up in a way that couldn't hide behind buzzwords anymore. Let me explain something about universities. They move slowly. They approve budgets in advance. They love committees. They love oversight. What they don't love: unplanned 6-figure accelerations. By month 3, they had paid roughly $230,000. Out of a content budget originally set around $40,000, $50,000 for the year. Not exceeded. Not stretched. Demolished. The first red flag came from an assistant controller. Not a VP. Not a dean. Some quiet mid-level finance employee who noticed that a marketing line item was 500% over forecast. That person sent an email. Subject line: clarification needed. Content production overages. And that email began the collapse. Daniel kept me updated because, let's be honest, we were both watching the slow motion crash. The director got called into a budget review meeting. He apparently went in confident, left pale, because the question wasn't, why are we outsourcing? The question was, why have we spent more in 3 months than the entire annual allocation? And here's the beautiful part. Everything was technically approved. Every invoice had a signature. And whose signature was on most of them? My former manager's. You see, when she said, "We'll hire professionals," she didn't loop finance in. She didn't reforecast. She didn't escalate budget authority properly. She just signed. Because she needed to prove I was replaceable. And proving things with other people's money is risky. 2 weeks later, Daniel called me. Internal audit. I almost choked laughing. Already? Yep. They want breakdowns on everything. Crew day rates, equipment rentals, post-production hours, music licensing, location permits, catering, everything. Now here's the thing. Daniel's company was legitimate. They weren't overcharging. They weren't scamming. They were billing market rates. But market rates look obscene when you're used to paying one underpaid 25-year-old with his own laptop. That's the difference. I was cheap. They were professional. And professional costs. By month 4, the tension was everywhere. My former colleagues started texting me. "Dude, what did you do? Marketing is a war zone." Director got screamed at in a board meeting. Apparently, the chancellor himself got involved. Because when 6-figure overruns hit institutional budgets, it becomes political. And nobody likes explaining to trustees why YouTube cost almost $500,000. Meanwhile, production was still running. Because once you sign a contract like that, stopping mid-cycle creates legal exposure. Which meant they were trapped. Continue spending and look reckless. Or cancel and face breach of contract penalties. Either way, it was expensive. Then the first rumor hit. They were considering cutting the project entirely. But here's where my former manager made her fatal mistake. Instead of slowing down, she accelerated. She pushed Daniel's company to produce even faster. Why? Because if she finished all 85 videos, she could stand in front of the board and say, "See? I delivered." It didn't matter that it cost 10x the budget. She wanted completion, not sustainability, which is a very dangerous mindset. By month 5, they had produced 50 videos. 50. In roughly 4 months. Impressive. Also financially catastrophic. Total spent at that point? Just under $350,000. And now the chancellor wasn't just concerned. He was furious. There was a closed-door executive meeting. No marketing. No production. Just finance and administration. And here's the part one loved. Someone finally asked, why was the original content creator terminated? Which meant my name entered the room. I got the call 2 days later. From my former manager. First time we'd spoken since she fired me. Her tone? Different. Less confident. More brittle. We need to discuss your role in this. I almost admired the audacity. My role? I asked. Yes, the production house you recommended. I didn't recommend anyone, I said calmly. You hired professionals. Silence. You were aware of their rates. I built a vendor list with publicly available pricing estimates. You knew this would happen. No, I replied evenly. I assumed finance would do their due diligence. That one stung her. I could hear it. Then she said something unexpected. We're reviewing termination procedures. Interesting. That's corporate for. We're looking for someone to blame. And when the money gets that big, someone always falls. But here's where things escalated beyond budget embarrassment. Because she did something stupid. She filed a complaint against me. Claimed I had intentionally misrepresented vendor capabilities. That I sabotaged internal forecasting. That I acted in bad faith. In other words, she tried to sue. Or at least threatened to. Which was wild. Because everything had been above board. Vendor list accurate. Rates accurate. Contracts signed by her. Invoices approved by her. But ego doesn't like public humiliation. So she escalated. And that's when things got interesting. Because unlike her, I understood documentation. And I had kept everything. Every email about KPI expectations. Every overtime record. Every message where she said, quality over quantity. Every production milestone report showing engagement growth. I wasn't worried. But I saw opportunity. Because lawsuits aren't just about winning. They're about leverage. And if she wanted to drag this into formal proceedings, I was more than happy to stretch it. Not recklessly, strategically, because every legal motion costs money. And guess who was already hemorrhaging budget credibility? Her. Mario. Yes, Daniel's GM panicked. They're threatening action, he said. If they claim we misled them. Relax, I told him. They can't prove misrepresentation. Rates were transparent. Deliverables were met. But what if this goes to court? I leaned back in my chair. Then we let it. Silence. Are you insane? No, I said. I'm patient. Because here's what she didn't understand. If this became formal litigation, discovery would open. And discovery means internal emails, budget approvals, KPI documentation, termination records, performance reviews, financial authorizations, all public, all reviewable, all expensive. And the longer discovery lasts, the higher the legal bill. For them, I knew I could win with the documentation I had. But I also knew something else. Dragging it out would cost them more. Financially, politically, reputationally. And I was young, single, flexible. They were administrators with careers, which meant they had more to lose. The formal complaint came 2 weeks later. Not a full lawsuit yet, but a demand letter, accusing me of conflict of interest, inducing vendor selection, financial manipulation. I read it 3 times. Then I smiled. Because buried in that letter was a fatal line. They acknowledged ownership of the vendor selection. In writing, which meant they confirmed the decision was theirs. Not mine. They had just undercut their own argument. I called Mario. Let them file. You're enjoying this too much. Maybe. But here's the truth. I wasn't just enjoying it. I was curious. Because I wanted to see how far ego would go before reality intervened. And reality was getting closer. Finance had already escalated. The chancellor was furious. Internal audit was ongoing. Now legal was involved. And once legal departments enter the chat, they start asking very sharp questions. Questions like, who approved this? Who signed this? Who terminated the previous employee? Was the KPI realistic? And the answer to all of those was her. She thought the lawsuit would scare me. Didn't. It annoyed me. There's a difference. Once she filed formally, everything changed. Because now it wasn't just a demand letter. It was sworn statements, discovery, depositions, court records. And unlike her, I was completely fine letting everything go public. We answered aggressively, denied all claims. Then we opened discovery. And we didn't go light. We requested all internal emails discussing my KPI. Any feasibility analysis behind the 85 video target. Budget projections before outsourcing. Communications with finance. Notes from board meetings. HR discussions about my smoking. Performance evaluations. Any written documentation showing I was warned properly. Their legal team objected. The judge overruled most of it. Because once you claim financial harm, the entire decision-making chain becomes relevant. And that's when the cracks started showing. The deposition that hurt during her deposition, they asked her, "Did you conduct a production feasibility study before assigning 85 videos?" No. Did you consult industry benchmarks? No. Was the KPI adjusted after recognizing equipment limitations? No. Were you aware the employee worked 60+ hours weekly? Yes. Did you tell him quality mattered more than quantity? Yes. That last one was fatal, because now we had documented proof that 1. The KPI had no structural basis. 2. The expectations were contradictory. 3. Overtime was known. 4. Termination occurred before performance remediation. Then came the budget questions. Did you obtain written approval before exceeding forecast by 500%? No. Did you sign the production contract? Yes. Did you approve milestone invoices? Yes. It was like watching someone dig their own hole in slow motion. Trial. By the time we reached trial, the internal audit was already circulating. Finance had concluded. Budget authority was exceeded. Procurement protocols were bypassed. No performance improvement plan was implemented before termination. KPI expectations lacked documented feasibility. Her attorney tried to argue intent, that I engineered the overrun. My attorney didn't even need theatrics. He just walked through the math. If one person can produce 6 fully scripted, shot, edited videos per month alone, what does industry standard indicate? We had an expert witness. Industry average for that time period, 2 to 4 high-quality videos per month per solo producer. The judge actually leaned forward. So 85 per year would require what? Our expert answered calmly. At least a small team. And then my attorney asked the question that ended it. If the employee had not been terminated, would outsourcing 55 videos at market rate have been necessary? She hesitated. No. And who made the decision to terminate? I did. That was the moment. You could feel it. Because now this wasn't about sabotage. It was about mismanagement. The ruling 2 weeks later, the ruling dropped. Case dismissed. But it didn't stop there. Because the judge went further. He noted in the written opinion that the KPI lacked documented feasibility. The outsourcing decision was voluntary. No evidence supported fraudulent vendor manipulation. The plaintiff failed to demonstrate bad faith. And most importantly, the court awarded legal fees to the defense. That's rare. Very rare. But when a case is deemed weak and procedurally reckless, it happens. Their legal bill? Roughly $250,000. Now they had to reimburse ours. Another $180,000 plus. Add that to the production overrun. Add that to audit costs. We were now comfortably over $800,000 in damage tied to her decisions. But I wasn't done because during trial, something very useful had been established. On the record, under oath, that the KPI was structurally unrealistic. That no feasibility study was conducted. That termination occurred without a formal improvement process. That quality had been verbally prioritized over quantity. That overtime was known. That's wrongful termination territory. So 3 months after the ruling, I filed. Quietly. wrongful termination, hostile performance metrics, improper dismissal, constructive bad faith evaluation. This time, the university didn't fight. Because the audit findings were already public internally. Because the chancellor was furious. Because the manager was already placed on administrative restructuring. Because they did not want another trial transcript floating around. Settlement talks began almost immediately. No courtroom drama. No depositions. Just numbers. My attorney aimed high. Very high. They negotiated. Back and forth. In the end, we settled. Confidentially. But let's just say, it was significantly more than a year of my original salary. Significantly. Enough to cover film school overseas. Pay living expenses. Invest. Reset completely. And the agreement included neutral reference language. Which, in corporate terms, is gold. The aftermath she didn't last. Officially, restructuring. Unofficially, budget catastrophe. The director kept his job. Barely. Procurement policies were rewritten. KPI approval processes centralized. Finance gained veto power on marketing contracts. All because someone wanted to prove I was replaceable. Do I feel bad? No. Because I didn't sabotage them. I didn't inflate numbers. I didn't falsify invoices. I didn't lie. I understood market rates.
I understood ego.
And I understood math. She wanted professionals. She got professionals. She wanted 85 videos. She got 85 videos. She wanted to prove I wasn't necessary. She proved something else instead. That the cheapest employee in the room is sometimes the most expensive to lose.